Hello there, broadcasting live. This is episode 50 of JW Watch, the show that keeps a close eye on all things JW, offering Jehovah's Witnesses a more objective viewpoint on current developments that the governing body almost certainly doesn't want them to hear. On Tuesday, February 7th, it was announced that 5 additional Jehovah's Witnesses in Pennsylvania have been charged with child sexual abuse in connection with their involvement in the Jehovah's Witness community. This brings the total number of such prosecutions to 9, after 4 witnesses were charged towards the end of October, as announced by then Attorney General Josh Shapiro, who has since become the state's governor. This time it fell to Acting Attorney General Michelle Henry to call a press conference in which yet more chilling stories of abuse were brought to light. Rejoining me to discuss this development is the same panel we had for episode 49, namely collaborator and friend of the channel, Jana Montero, and Diana, who works as a Pennsylvania court reporter. Thanks so much to both of you for joining us.
Hello.
Thanks
for having us.
I was just saying off air that on the one hand, it feels important that we're doing this, that we're coming together to talk about this story. But on the other hand, I wish we didn't have to do it.
It's a very sad reason to come back together, unfortunately.
It is. And Diana, your input, as always, will be invaluable because you have professional expertise in this area, not to mention local knowledge.
Absolutely. Yes.
So what I thought we'd do is, to begin with, is actually watch together the press briefing. As before, if either of you would like to pause the video at any moment just to comment, feel free to just indicate. I'll try to keep an eye on the hands, or just verbally indicate. What I will do actually to begin with is start a banner along the bottom with, bear with me one moment. So this is the Pennsylvania Abuse Survivor Hotline, which I think it's fairly safe to say, Diana, may have played a large part in these extra charges being brought.
I think so. I think so. I think that some of the victims that came forward were in the same congregation as some of the victims were before. And maybe they keep in contact. I don't know for sure, but it just seems like 2 more in this county where I live were charged, and it seems to be the same congregation. Just,
sure.
Telling.
Yeah.
What I think is also important about this number, it is an 888 number, so I know it's one of those like commercial numbers that they're using for the purpose of people calling in to not flood their normal police lines. But what I think is important to know about the number on the screen is, even if your case can't be tried in Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania Inquirer did a write-up on this. And they said that in that article that it is a organization investigation. And so I'm not sure how far they plan on taking it or how reliable the Pennsylvania Inquirer is as a source of news. But I would say that if you're able, and if you feel that adding your voice to this call could help bring attention to what we know is an organization-wide problem.
Yeah, absolutely crucial to assist in any way, even if, again, you're not in Pennsylvania. I mean, preferably you would be in America. It might be problematic if you call from a different country, but certainly in America, I'm sure that the Attorney General's office will do everything they can, or Acting Attorney General's office will do everything they can to direct you in the right direction. So what we'll do now is look at the press briefing.
We're good? Well, good morning, everyone. We are here today to announce that the 49th Investigative Grand Jury has voted on and approved presentments for 5 individuals who have committed sexual abuse against children throughout Pennsylvania. Let me begin first by thanking the members of the Office of Attorney General who have assisted with this case. First, Deputy Attorney General James Donahue, Deputy Chief of Staff Kirsten Hyde, Executive Deputy Attorney General Michelle Walsh, Chief Deputy District Attorney Ron Eisenberg, Chief Deputy Attorney General Chris Jones, Assistant Chief Deputy Attorney General Dan Dye, to my left, Supervising Agent Doug Hilliard, Deputy Attorney General Alicia Warner, Special Agent Jimmy Muma, and Special Agent Steve Adamus.
Sorry, Diana, we'll just pause there. Were any of those names familiar to you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, most of them.
I would
imagine.
also kind of like to add, while maybe none of us are ever going to be in touch with any of these people, it's interesting that she is calling the name and position of all of the people that were involved in helping, which is something that when you hear the broadcasting about these apostate lies, they're not going to give you names and things for you to be able to look into this yourself. So this is a level of transparency you're not going to get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost an excess of information, isn't it, compared to
yes,
just total obfuscation. So thank you. Good point.
Also take a moment to thank the citizens, the men and women who served on the investigative grand jury. They took their time, they listened to difficult evidence, they evaluated that evidence, and they returned these charges. Finally, let me thank those that came forward, the survivors of child sexual abuse. They had a courageous voice. They came and they told us what had happened to them. And they make our community safer. We would not be here today without them. These cases, as all of them are disturbing and sad. But this one, in particular, digs deeper. Because in this case, all of the defendants and all of the victims come from the same religious organization, the Jehovah Witnesses. Some of these defendants even used their faith communities to prey upon the victims, and others had to look no further than their own families. The details of these crimes are hard to listen to.
Jana, you had your hand raised?
I think it's important too, if you are someone who's in the processing of waking up, to note that what she just said, that these were active members of the congregation. These aren't apostates. These aren't excommunicated people who are trying to bring reproach to Jehovah's name. These are people in the congregation, active members, some elders.
Can I just add something?
Sure.
Active to the point where one was in my mother's congregation, and she had some surgery this summer on her knee. And this particular person in her congregation was overly helpful. and very, very polite. I mean, he was still participating and an active member as of July of this year.
Wow. So, yeah, let's not give any, let's not waste any time with, the usual fob off. Oh, well, these are just a few bad apples. And, these are people who were perhaps long disfellowshipped. No, these are cases where the organization has covered up abuse. And so it's important not to be sidetracked by any excuses. Oh, they've been disfellowshipped. No, there's a reason why we're now dealing with 9. After the first few were announced back in October, we've gone from 4 to 9. It's conceivable for me. I don't know what you think, Diana. It's conceivable for me that we'll have even more arrests in the months ahead, and it's quite frankly infuriating that we even need to do these shows. But I feel it's very important that we bring to light this particular story, and it's very, very important, I think, to give attention to this press briefing, which can so easily just get buried among
under
the videos
all the other
that Jehovah.
Exactly.
Get buried, and Jehovah's Witnesses just never have a reason to see it. But hopefully by just giving it some airtime here on this channel, we're increasing the likelihood that those who need to see it will see it. And obviously we have,
and also that the victims, know they'll be heard now. In one case prior, one of the victims had gone to the authorities in 2016, and it was just dismissed. It was kind of fobbed off as we didn't believe her. I don't know. But when they did the grand jury investigation, they came back and they found that she had some credible stuff. So, I think, a lot of maybe the victims in the past thought maybe they wouldn't be heard, or wouldn't go anywhere, or what's the use. But I think now that we've got these nine charges, I think more people are thinking, well, maybe they'll believe my story.
Absolutely. So I'll keep an eye out for hands, and let's continue.
But make no mistake about it. This office will do absolutely everything we can to hold these men accountable for what they did to these innocent children. I'd like to take you back to the beginning, to the background on this case. Some of you may recall that in October, this office announced criminal charges in 4 cases in 4 different Pennsylvania counties against 4 members of the Jehovah Witness organization for sexual assault and exploitation of children. That investigation started as a resource referral from a local district attorney's office. And when we received it, we began to investigate that case and gather evidence. Through that investigation, we learned of several incidents of sexual assault committed by members of Jehovah Witnesses congregation. After a 3-year investigation, hundreds of hours of grand jury testimony, and dozens of witnesses, we filed charges against those 4 individuals. And at that time, when we announced those charges against the 4 individuals, we asked for people to come forward, for anybody who had something similar like this happen to them, to reach out, to call our hotline and come to us. And many courageous survivors came forward and called the hotline. So as a result of our ongoing investigation and the individuals that reached out to us on our hotline, we are here today to announce these charges.
So the hotline did play a significant part, or she wouldn't have said that, would she? If it was just
Absolutely. It was successful.
coincidental. Yeah.
I would also like to add that even if you don't think your personal case meets the requirements, or that you even want to pursue a court case for justice or anything like that. I think what she just said here is anybody who has a similar thing, this is an ongoing investigation. And so obviously they don't want spam calls. But what you can do by sharing that, even if you have no intention of pursuing justice or your abuser may be dead or something, but you know that you went to the elders, you know that it's in a record somewhere. That could be helpful information for them to know that there is this sort of record keeping in local congregations. So it may not be, them pursuing your court case, but this tip line is helpful to them in their ongoing investigation.
Absolutely.
I want to thank the honorable men and women that helped us apprehend these individuals. The Pennsylvania State Police Butler Barracks, the Ross Township Police, the Ketchum City Police in Idaho, the Braddock Hills Police Department, and all members of law enforcement that assisted us and continue to assist us in this endeavor. Now I'm going to go through each case individually, but I really invite you to take the time to look at the presentments. They will be available to all of you, and they have more detail than I will recount this morning. Let me begin first with Mark Brown, 65 of Allegheny County. It is alleged that Brown repeatedly sexually abused two sisters for whom he was the legal guardian at the time. They were between the ages of 10 and 13 years old when this happened. They testified to being assaulted in the shower and other parts of the house that they shared with Brown when they were young girls. He threatened the older sister that if she did anything to stop him, or if she told anyone, he would sexually abuse her younger sister. When in reality, that was already happening. He was already doing that to her. She didn't know it. Brown is charged with aggravated indecent assault, endangering the welfare of children, and corruption of minors. The next case is Raymond Schultz, 74 of Beaver County. It is alleged that Schultz repeatedly sexually assaulted his own granddaughters when they were between the ages of 5 and 10 years old. Both girls testified to being assaulted while visiting Schultz at his home. The girls' parents trusted him, asked him to watch them, and he betrayed that trust in the most horrendous way. He's been charged with aggravated indecent assault, endangering the welfare of children, and corruption of minors. The next case is Abamil Valentine Matos, 42 of Lancaster County. It is alleged that Matos abused a 15-year-old girl who at the time was half his age, claiming that he intended to marry her. He met this victim in 2009 at a Jehovah Witness event that brought together multiple congregations. The congregation was aware of his romantic interest in the girl, noting that they would approve of it if certain conditions were met, including the presence of a chaperone and the commitment to eventually marry her.
This was unbelievable. All of this is unbelievable and very, very hard to process. But here's kind of a real tangible example of the organization simply not taking child sexual abuse seriously, to the extent where a 15-year-old is allowed to be in a romantic relationship with someone double her age on the understanding that there is an intention to marry this 15-year-old and that there is a chaperone. I mean, what on earth is going on there? You know?
Yeah, it says supposedly courting. And then she said that he knew of the victim since 2009. She must have been, what, 2, 3? I mean, a baby. So how long has he even been targeting her?
The unfortunate thing, Lloyd, is that it's not unbelievable. It's practically predictable and systematically arranged, because I witnessed personally in the congregation that I used to be in, that young girls, especially if there's a lack of diversity in the congregation, there will be a ministerial servant or an elder even who is older and interested. I know of a personal experience where the parents had to actually sign off saying that she was allowed to marry because she was underage in this state. And that's the way that the organization has dating set up. As long as there's a chaperone, things should be okay. He has good intentions. He has the spiritual requirements. She said even as long as certain criteria were met, the congregation knew about it. The congregation was fine with it. The parents were fine with it. He's an upstanding spiritual brother. And they go out in service. They're out there with pioneers probably. This is but also with the way that the organization treats marriage and sexual repression and premarital sex, a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses end up getting married very, very young. Or if you're dating someone, it's because you're going to marry them. You shouldn't be dating them otherwise. That's the way that the organization works. And she was 15. There's so many other people you could meet in your life at that point.
I guess to clarify, it's sorry, go on, Diana.
No, I mean, he was twice her age. I mean, what were the parents even thinking?
Yeah.
Elder or whatever, I mean, that's a huge age difference. I would never let my child at 15 date somebody who's 30. It's just
respected in the congregation.
Yeah. Well,
I guess that's why I say unbelievable. Clearly, unfortunately, having covered this and similar stories over the last 11 years, it's entirely believable. But I'm thinking more from the perspective of someone who has been an elder, albeit for just 12 months. I've been through ministerial training school, or as it's now known, the School for Kingdom Evangelizers. I like to think I know the rules fairly well. And for a body of elders to get together and talk about a 15-year-old girl in terms of having a chaperone and being married off at some point, I just really struggle to get my head around, how they've reached that decision. I would love to know, and maybe this information either is available or will come to light. I'd love to know to what extent the branch was involved in this guidance, or whether this was just some completely out of touch elders who had absolutely no grasp whatsoever of the lack of propriety in this situation.
Yeah, well, or maybe it was just their easy way of dealing with it. Well, you're going to get married, so there really isn't anything wrong going on here. There's a chaperone, the parents are all on board, kind of a way to just sort of skirt around that whole issue, and just not to have the attention. That's how I think.
We'll continue.
Mato's interest in the minor quickly turned sexual, and he began sending inappropriate photos and convinced her to meet him alone, no chaperone. During these meetings, he sexually assaulted her. He's been charged with indecent assault, indecent exposure, endangering the welfare of children, and corruption of minor. The next case is Kevin Isovich, 51, of Butler County. It is alleged that he sexually assaulted a member of his family when she was just 9 years old. The victim recalled playing with her cousins when he pulled her into his bedroom and assaulted her. The abuse only stopped that day when the defendant's wife returned home. He's been charged with rape, aggravated indecent assault, endangering the welfare of children, and corruption of minors. The next case is Norman Aviles, 44, of Lancaster County. It is alleged that he sexually assaulted 3 minors who were between the age of 5 and 10 years old. He was an elder in the Jehovah Witness congregation, which allowed him to build a rapport with members. He gained the trust of several parents, including his own relatives, which gave him extensive access to young girls in the congregation.
I think this is a key point here, that, you know, the level of position in the Jehovah's Witness congregation gives you more access. And it's something that is frustratingly overlooked all too many times, you know, when we're talking about public inquiries. You know, I'm speaking from experience with ICSA. You know, the more position, the more power you have, the more you not only know the rules, but can exploit the position of trust that you are in, so that you can have more access
Right.
to.
And you can influence people when you're in that position, you know, and people seem to trust you.
Sure. And I will just add, I'm aware of the flood of very insightful comments that are coming through, including some very generous super chats. And what I'm doing is I'm starring them on my interface. So what we'll do is we'll revisit a selection of comments towards the end of the show. Let's resume.
Trusted to babysit and even act as a guardian to one of his victims. The grand jury heard testimony from 2 of his victims that described that he groped their bodies and assaulted them. A 3rd victim testified to frequent unwanted touching, including groping. He has been charged with aggravated indecent assault, endangering the welfare of children, and corruption of minor. We have a duty to protect children in Pennsylvania.
Sorry, Diana, did you raise your hand?
No, I was just making notes. Sorry.
Did you raise your hand? Okay.
Yeah, I did.
Maybe I registered a hand and didn't quite attach it to the right person. Okay.
What I just wanted to add to this extremely upsetting situation is not only is he in a trusted position in the congregation, held to be a spiritual leader locally, somebody who helps feed the flock locally. And then, as she continued to describe, was trusted with the care of the children or babysitting or things like that. I know that a lot of the times the Jehovah's Witness organization will say, well, we don't separate families when it comes to worship. We don't have like the play school part of, or what do they call it? When the kids go out
we don't have I don't know.
The kid worship part. They don't have
Kindergarten
separate
situations.
kid worship.
Yeah.
And separate adult worship. Everybody's together. Families are encouraged to sit together. And yeah, that's all true. But there are many opportunities, because unfortunately, for them to be alone. There's congregation get-togethers when they're out in service. The other victim who met the 15-year-old who met the man at a Jehovah's Witness event that brought several congregations together. That could have been a convention or an assembly. They could have met in the hallway.
Yeah.
And those are big buildings. To just assume that your children are safe in.
Yeah, this was, again, a huge irritation of mine during the ICSA inquiry, because I had to deal with the Christian Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses giving evidence that they, as you say, don't separate children from their parents. And I, along with other core participants, I think we came up with 4 different kind of documented ways in which children do get separated from their parents routinely in Jehovah's Witness worship. One example being, of course, meetings for field service. And, you know, I can vividly remember, in fact, I remember being very embarrassed because I was working with a school-age girl in the preaching work during the kind of normal school term, because she was supposed to be being home educated, and yet as part of her home education, she was being dragged out in the preaching work by her mother. And I can remember feeling acutely embarrassed to be on the doorstep with someone else's child, and for the person, you know, the householder, quote unquote, to be understandably appalled that a child was on his doorstep during the school term. He was saying, well, you know, what's she doing here? She should be at school, you know? And I didn't know what to say.
And she's not your daughter.
Not my daughter. And that's exactly the sort of situation in which children do get separated routinely from their parents.
Oh,
yeah.
I did too. I did too. Yeah.
Okay, continue.
These children deserve a community where they can grow, play, learn, and pray, and not be preyed upon. Our office will never stop working to bring justice for those who have been victimized. We will continue to investigate and prosecute anyone who takes advantage and harms the most vulnerable in our society. We urge anyone who has any information about any of these cases or who has had a similar experience to reach out to us. Tell us what happened. We will be here. On a personal note, and because this is my first announcement of this nature, I want to underscore what I just said. It is my solemn pledge that I will be here to help survivors. Much of my career spent as a prosecutor prior to joining this office was focused on prosecuting those that sexually abuse children. I'm deeply aware of the impact these kind of cases have on the victims, have on the victim's family, and it is our duty to seek justice, to be their voice, to hold these individuals accountable so that they may have some hope of more moving forward in life. And so I say, again, to anyone with any information regarding similar allegations of sexual assault, I urge you to please contact our hotline, 888-538-8541. We will not hesitate to take action. Thank you.
Did you have a comment there, Jana?
I just wanted to add that about the last man that they mentioned, with the 3 young victims, survivors, that he unfortunately evaded arrest and is at large. So probably also anyone who has information on his whereabouts should call that number. Apparently the last sighting was in Puerto Rico.
Could you just repeat the name for us, Jana?
Nope.
I have it here.
Okay.
His name is Norman Aviles Garriga. Garriga. First name Norman.
Okay.
He's 44, so he's in his mid-40s.
And just to repeat, just in case the information is helpful in jogging anyone's memory, this is an individual who is alleged to have molested at least 3 young children between the ages of 5 and 10. Aviles was an elder in his congregation, which helped him gain the trust of many parents and offered him access to their children. Aviles has been charged with aggravated indecent assault, endangering the welfare of children, and corruption of minors.
And you know what? He's on the run. Who knows how many children are being victimized? It just breaks my heart.
I mean, when Jana told me this, because we're in touch quite a bit, aren't we, Jana? I remember thinking, how is that even possible to go on the run? I mean, in the 21st century, you need to be able to have a bank account. You need to be able to, you can't just get by, just, being paid in cash.
He could be staying with brothers and sisters who believe his side of the story and that he's being persecuted. They could be harboring a fugitive.
It could be. It's very likely.
I mean, I understand it's possible. I just, gosh, how is it possible in the 21st century to just go on the run from anyway? Maybe it's just a personal gripe with the U.S. criminal system.
Yeah,
there are too many gripes there for me.
And,
so.
And he posted bail. So whatever bail he was set, 500,000 unsecured, secured, he posted it. That's why he's out.
Oh, that's why he's out. Okay, so it's not like he's kind of bust out of jail or anything. He's been let out on jail and then on bail. Sorry, and that's been abused. Okay. Well,
and obviously, I'm of the opinion he shouldn't have been given bail or maybe $50 million cash, because whatever it was he found, whether it was his house or whoever posted the bail. I know the one victim.
What an appalling thing to do, by the way. If it wasn't his own personal assets to be a beneficiary in that way. Oh, I'll stump up the money there. There's a worthy cause.
Yeah, it could be the members. It could be a family member. I know in the one case that I'm particularly following from October, the only asset was the house, and yeah.
Yeah, and this is the second man that of the 9 Jehovah's Witness men so far that have been charged by Pennsylvania. This is the second one that they've lost during the attempt to arrest.
And they'll catch him. They'll catch him. And then there's something in Pennsylvania where
well, not the other guy. The other guy shot himself.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that. But when
somebody killed himself anyway, I didn't say how he killed himself. Sorry.
When you go on the run in Pennsylvania and you're eventually caught, there's a jury instruction that can be given. It's called consciousness of guilt, and the jury's directed that you can hold that against them. Why did they go on the run? It's consciousness of guilt. So it's one factor that the jury can consider.
So yes, if you do have any information on this individual, please do call the hotline.
Sure.
So from what I understand, Jehovah's Witness has its own internal judicial system. Have you investigated if they were aware of this, if they looked into it, and if so, will you be looking at the organization for any charges?
This is an ongoing investigation.
Oh, short answer. Sorry, is there more there?
So,
sorry, maybe I cut her off. Did she?
No, that
This
was
is an
a short
ongoing
answer.
investigation.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
And if
I mean-
anybody couldn't hear that because it was very soft, do you have the transcript of?
I don't have a transcript, but if anyone couldn't hear it, a reporter just asked the acting attorney general to what extent was the organization involved in this abuse, and does the investigation encompass the leadership effectively?
She said, she said from her understanding, the Jehovah's Witnesses have their own internal
Internal,
judicial system,
yeah.
which is
And
actually,
the answer was it's an ongoing investigation. So
Which means it's pretty certain that they're looking into that. And there's probably
she's
going to
certainly
be,
not bending over backwards to exonerate the organization there, is she?
nope, that's the answer that you give when you're an attorney.
which
Yeah.
while these cases are so upsetting and personally triggering to many of us, it's important that we talk about this, and it's important that, you know, you're sharing that number, because the more attention that's brought to this situation could protect more children. I know of another case where a sister and her twin were abused by an elder, told their parents, and the solution was their parents moved them to a different congregation, and that man continued to serve as an elder. And that doesn't protect other children from these sorts of situations. So the more attention these 9 Pennsylvania witnesses have in this ongoing investigation, that they seem to be very, what's the word? Aggressively pursuing. It's important. Sorry, I'm
You're
upset.
right. No, I think what you have to do is like they did in Australia. You have to go from the top. You got to look down. You've got to say, okay, what's the hierarchy here, and what are the reporting? Are they mandated reporters and all this kind of stuff? And
Big picture, look at how they can protect other kids in the future going forward. So, I know that at the end of ICSA, that the Jehovah's Witness organization made no changes to the way that their judicial system works in these cases. But if this is something that goes nationwide, not just 9 in Pennsylvania, this is something that
it's actually going worldwide. I have a friend in Norway who's watching right now. Hi, Thomas. But so yeah, he's pretty on to watching these videos too. So he'll spread the word, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Norway are leading the way at the moment, aren't they?
Exactly.
Leading the
They're in the news
charge.
a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't stop those Vikings, can you? Okay.
Yes.
Can you speak to the nature of some of these individuals, as you said, were dealing with people in authority, or they all were in authority, dealing with the fact that these are adults that obviously know what they are doing, but in some cases the children are dealing with people they think should be trusted, or they don't know how to otherwise interact with.
Well, I can tell you that unfortunately, as you probably know, in child abuse cases, it's very frequent that the individuals who prey on children do so in a way that they build trust with the adults around these children, such that they trust them and allow them access, never imagining that actually they're predators. That's a frequent thing that we see in these cases. Yes?
Were the 2 men from Lancaster County from the same congregation, the same group?
They were associated with the Lancaster East and West congregations.
Any other questions? Well, thank you all for coming. We appreciate it.
Again, details given when requested, in stark contrast to what we see from the organization.
Yeah. Actually, this press conference, in my opinion, was much more detailed than one in October. She just gave more information, which I thought was really good. Because I think as awful as it is to hear it, I think that people need to hear it.
there was a broadcast Jehovah's Witness broadcast. I don't know if it was last year sometime, with Stephen Lett, and he mentioned he was, going over the highlights and mentions that they won 4 court cases and it was a reason to rejoice. So that's all that he said. He didn't say what these cases were. This is again, that contrast of the transparency that we're seeing here, from non-Jehovah's Witness, non-ex-Jehovah's Witness, just exposing facts, not fabricating stories because they have a personal gripe against the organization.
It is true. It is true that they won a court case, and I can tell you one that I personally had some involvement with. It was over a land dispute out here somewhere. So yeah, they did win it. But when he says we won court cases, he's into, it's like, oh,
he's inflating the importance of it to make it seem like it was a victory for Jehovah.
Right.
When in reality, this, like you just said, it was a land dispute.
Yeah,
and then they have cases like these that they don't want you to know about, that they're sometimes actively on the other side.
Yeah, and then
fighting.
People might say, well, oh, I saw, him on lead on, and he said that, they won the case, and they're in their mind, they're thinking that's the abuse cases, So it's very, very clever the way he says that.
Or that it exonerates them of what they've done.
Right. That somehow winning court cases in a land dispute, it's,
It's disingenuous argumentation of the kind that they accuse apostates routinely, isn't it? So, Diana, you were mentioning, before we came on air that, you'd done a little bit of extra digging, and there are some documents that I know you were quite keen to show us. Are you ready to take us through those?
Sure. Are you going to pull them up or?
Sure.
Okay. This is probably the only document I really wanted to share because this encompasses pretty much everything that's been going on.
Okay.
So I personally know of one of the victims here in Lancaster County, and this is him, Jose Serrano. I'm affiliated with him through, of course, my affiliation with the religion. As you know, my mom is still active, and I still have some friends that, I kind of keep in contact with. So, when this hit my radar, I was like, wow. So when we came back here in October, nobody really knew what was going on. It was just the charges. But actually what we have here is called a criminal complaint. So if you look at it, you'll see his name, Jose Antonio Serrano. He went by Tony. His address. Let me just preface this by saying, go back up. Let me just preface this by saying that what I'm showing you here, or what Lloyd's showing you here, this is all public record. So I'm not breaking anybody's trust. I'm not, in a position like using my power to get this. You go online and Google it. You can see it too. So
no one's being doxxed here. This is already public record. So,
it's already public record, and I would never, I would never divulge anything I shouldn't. And I do know quite a bit more about these cases than I would never divulge. But so if you see magisterial district number Adam J. Witkonis, he used to be a public defender at Lancaster County, so I know him. So he's the magisterial district J with the MDJ. So when somebody is charged in Pennsylvania with a crime, they go before what they call an MDJ, like little court maybe, before it goes to the big court. And basically what happens is they have a hearing or not, but that establishes what they call a prima facie case. So it means in Latin, just, of the face. If there is enough to send it up to the higher court. It's not a fact case. They don't call the witnesses. What they do is they come in, they present, this is what happened. And they'll call other victims, and briefly, there's no cross-examination. It's just, do we have enough here? Is there enough probable cause here to send it up to the Commonwealth Court? So that can happen. Well, in this case, Jose Serrano, he waived his hearing. So what that meant was he didn't have a hearing. He said, you know what, I'm going to waive it to the higher court. So he didn't admit it. He just got rid of that extra, step. And a lot of defendants waive. It's not uncommon. So if you want to scroll down, it has the docket number. So this is the docket number. You can look it up. CR 483-2022. That's the criminal information number that's assigned to this case. You can go on. It's called PA Rocket Docket. You can put it on your phone. You can look this up. You can track it. You can see what's happening with this case. Has his date of birth and all that kind of stuff. And you scroll down a little bit. And then the gentleman that you saw on the newscast to the right, the one with the yellow tie, that's Daniel Dye. He was prosecuted.
Was he the one who interjected with the information about the?
Yes.
Yeah.
When she looked off, yeah.
Yeah, Daniel Dye used to be a district attorney with Lancaster, so I know him as well. He's been with the state now for maybe 8 years. And then below that, you see Jay Momo, Adam X, and N. Nickel. Those are all Lancaster County police officers. I'm familiar with them as well. They're the ones that did the initial investigations and filed the charges. So if you go down here, it says in or about 1993-94. So this is when it started. Yeah, this is when it started. Okay. A long time ago. So basically what it is, it's an affidavit. So it's the police officer saying that I, got this information. I certify that it's true and correct. And I really want to go and arrest this person, this defendant. So if you go down a little more, signed and sealed. And then if you go down a little more, they have what they call, you can stop here. This goes into the charges that were filed. Okay, so you have the statutes, okay, the inchoate offense, 189901A, subsection. So they're all what they're charged with. And you can see right here, if you go over to the second line down to the right, it says F2. That's a felony 2. Okay, that's a pretty high grading. Okay, that could carry up to 20 years. So, and then if you go down a little bit more, you'll see date and breath. He says you can read what he did. Date and location, having decent contact with the victim. The victim here and identified as JR, who was less than 13 years of age at the time of the offense. Okay, so that's the one charge, and then he's charged again. So if you go down again, he's another statute. Okay, this one is a felony 3. Okay, the grading's a little lower.
So presumably felony 1 is like the highest.
Yes.
Right.
This one is violating a duty of care protection. So, he did engage in a course of conduct, a sexual act with the victim identified who was less than 13 years of age. Okay, so it's a little bit lower the grading. It's I wouldn't say a little serious because anything is serious. Yeah. But when you categorize it as F1s, F2s, and F3s, you have to do that. You have to, because they each carry sort of a mandatory sentence on them. So if you go down a little more, this is what your affidavit of probable cause. Okay, same thing. They did this, and it says, based upon a review of the testimony given before the grand jury and the documents produced, we believe that the testimony of the various witnesses is accurately summarized in the presentment and the records referred to statingly. So if you scroll down even more, you'll see attached to that is continuation, presentment. Okay, this is what he's charged with. Okay, aggravated indecent assault, which is an F2. Title 18, indecent assault F3, and then endangering the welfare of a minor. So these are pretty serious. I'd say anywhere up to 20 years, and he could have them run consecutively, which means one after another. The judge can do that. So if you go down,
can I just say, if only sexual offences in the UK carried those sorts of sentences. It's recently come out that Gary Glitter is being released halfway through his sentence, and it was already a very lenient sentence.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean,
The
it
UK
was.
is really, really behind on this. Yeah.
They
I
really-
would also say, as a survivor, that that doesn't feel like enough,
no,
because the sentence for the survivor is their life. They have to live with it for their entire life. You know, of course, I'm healing, I'm in therapy, I have a happy life. And but I'm saying that it's not something that goes away. And these people, this particular case, 1993, 1994, they've been holding on to this for over the sentence amount of years.
And if you notice, the one victim was born in 1990.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
They're-
yeah, I mean,
they're
yeah,
young.
it's
Very-
not, it's for me, it's not enough.
And can I just add that this particular individual pled guilty back in 1993 to having indecent contact with females 13 and 15 years old, pled guilty, and was still given privileges after everybody knew,
He
and
repented. Jehovah forgave him.
yeah,
And that's the sort of thing, by the way, that has to go through the branch. That you can't just kind of throw the body of elders under the bus, reprehensible though their actions were. That sort of thing gets signed off by the branch through the circuit overseer. So that's direct organisational involvement in putting a known child sex offender in a position of power in a congregation.
and for it to go on for so many years. So attached to the criminal affidavit is what they call kind of just like what happened at the grand jury. So when we met in October, we really had no idea what was said, what the gradings of the charges were going to be, whether it was, forcible, rape or whatever they were going to be. This is an overview. So I don't know if Lloyd can, load it up so people can look at it later, but this is what happened at the grand jury and the findings of facts. It says here, it was very interesting. The grand jury obtained documents indicating that Serrano confessed to molesting numerous children. In these documents, he identified 6 children and their ages at the time he assaulted them. GI, one of the 6 child victims of Serrano, appeared before the grand jury and testified that when she was a child, she often babysat for the same family, and that Serrano was aware of this fact. He regularly visited the home when the parents were away and began groping her as she, was watching these children, or she slept.
As she slept, yeah.
It says the groping then escalated into forcible rape. Okay, this victim right now is probably in her late 20s, early 30s. But she's as it says, she still lives in fear of him to this day. Then the grand jury also heard another one of his 6 victims in the 1980s insulted her by unwanted, touching, kissing, and stalked her. And if you drop down, it says these criminal offenses are no longer prosecuted due to the expiration of the statute. Yeah. But they demonstrate a common plan, scheme, or design that corroborates other evidence presented, which is the new stuff at the grand jury. In particular, the testimony of J.S., Serrano's own daughter, born 3rd of February 1990, who testified that she lived in a normal, isolated childhood. Serrano pulled her out of public education in order to homeschool her in their residence. So, he taught her in the Bible, you have to obey your parents, and we are your parents, and you have to listen to us. These controlling actions, it says, were reinforced by physical assault. So some of the assaults were not just physical, they were sexual. And then I won't read this, it's too distressing. But what it says in here is just, we'll go down, the acts began occurring as early as 1993. So
I think what I'll do is I'll make this document available for viewers to download.
It might be too distressing for some. So
yeah,
as long as there's a trigger warning or content warning, and they know what they're getting themselves into.
Yeah. So as we went lower, I thought, no, but I just wanted to say that it was the pattern of it, and this particular victim, I know from personal experience. I was told about 5 or 6 years ago that she went crazy and she got pregnant and she ran off to another city and she refused to speak to her family, and they vilified her. They vilified this girl, made her sound like she was just the craziest daughter in the world. And I feel so bad. I feel so bad for her, isolated down there, and who's on her side? When your own mother doesn't believe you.
Yeah. So again, that document will be made available. It's not available right now in the description, but I'll put that up as soon as I have an opportunity. And
it might be distressing for some, so just be here.
Absolutely. We've had a number of comments during the course of the show, and I thought it would be good to just go through them before we give our concluding thoughts. Supermare31 says we need to find a way to force the Jehovah's Witnesses to release that database. Could not agree more. It boggles my mind, to be honest, that that the authorities are just sitting on their hands with this, not just in the United States, but in the UK and elsewhere. How any organisation can just brazenly get away with sitting on criminal evidence to the tune of thousands of names of accused pedophiles in the 21st century absolutely astounds me.
And to add to that, if you don't mind, I know I'm not going to keep interjecting because I know you probably have a backlog of those. But to add to that, again, to reiterate, the number on the bottom, even if it's past the statute of limitations and you don't expect a court case, you don't expect justice, it establishes the pattern. It establishes how widespread these unfortunate situations are. And hopefully with this Attorney General's and governor's attempt to aggressively pursue these cases, that it might force that to happen.
Indeed. We have Stephen Spitzer saying, lock them up and toss the key away. Again, I can't argue with you there. Emmanuel Gonzalez says, I was abused when I was 12 years old by a ministerial servant. And again, another tried to when 13. And my mum was told to not say anything that would get bad reputation to Jehovah and his organisation.
Sorry,
I'm very, very sorry to hear about that, Emmanuel. And unfortunately, it seems that there's just case after case of this, to the point where I'm frankly astounded that I didn't run into this when I was an active Jehovah's Witness. The more I learn of how rampant this problem is, to be honest, it kind of speaks to how well it's concealed within the congregation so that other people in the congregation don't know. For me to kind of make it through decades as a Jehovah's Witness and be oblivious to the fact that I could have been sitting next to one of these monsters, and it's just swept under the rug, isn't it? Raven Tree Frog says it's an ongoing investigation, more developments likely to come. Hopefully Diana and Jana will be able to join me again as and when this very, very sad story develops further, as it almost inevitably will. Emmanuel further says, was so sad and mad when I, a couple of years later, went with my mum to an assembly and they were there with some kids like 10 years playing and joking with them. This is another...
Oh,
yeah, this is another...
I'm so sorry. That is so upsetting.
And how helpless he must have felt at that point, knowing that it's probably going on. And he tried. You tried, Emmanuel. Nobody listened to you.
Because
assemblies and conventions are routinely, whenever the organisation talks about its child safeguarding policies, including its representations at public inquiries, they completely gloss over assemblies and conventions because they view their policy of restrictions as being like a panacea. So once we've identified someone, what we'll do is we'll warn families in the congregation and we'll keep an eye on them, you know? Well, what about conventions and assemblies, you know? So,
And
and
they put
also,
the
is it
onus-
really reasonable to expect elders to double as cops
Right.
and follow someone around for the rest of time? Yeah.
They can't. They're not. They're not certified counselors, police. Law enforcement. They're not. They're not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they put the onus on people like Emmanuel to say, okay, well, you need to take the lead in forgiveness. Maybe you didn't get an apology, and maybe you never will get an apology, but use the example of Joseph. He was sold into slavery and beaten by his brothers, and he forgave them freely. And that's what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to bring reproach to Jehovah's name. It's an organizational conditioning to let this continue to happen. It's an environment that even when I was in the organization, I remember being at a convention and just parents would let their kids just walk around because they felt safe. They felt that the people there all loved Jehovah and it was safe. And I remember also thinking that, falling in line with that. But
there are so many areas. I can remember being young and being approached in a coat room. We had this huge coat room, and I remember there was this very dodgy individual that was coming, and nobody really knew. And he actually approached me, and it was dark in the coat room, and then he followed me on the way to the bathroom. I must have been maybe 14. He said, "Oh, you have a very nice rack," or something to that effect. I was like, "Ooh, yeah."
maybe if you had a chaperone, maybe you would have got married.
Yeah. I mean, it just.
I can just remember as well, because of course, it wasn't a case of just turning up at assemblies and conventions and listening to the talks and going home, was it? Usually, depending on how involved your family were, it would be a case of, oh, we need to stay behind and help clean, and then, oh, why don't you go, Lloyd, and report to the cleaning department, and report to the cleaning overseer and get your instructions there, So assemblies and conventions were never simply a case of just turning up and listening to talks. They were a situation in which it was basically a melting pot of multiple congregations, and we're now learning multiple abusers. So Sabrina Kraft says, thank you for the enormous effort you put forth and the emotional toll you shoulder. We truly appreciate the incredible amount of time and empathy and love you show to the victims. You make a difference. I think we can safely say that's extended to our esteemed panel today, who've shared their time so generously in going over this information. So thank you, Sabrina. Jamie Dolan says, there's no statute of limitations on rape in Pennsylvania, right? Diana, could you clarify on that?
There is, unfortunately, there is.
Right.
I'm not quite sure how long it is, but like I said before, the babysitter, it had gone beyond that period. I'm not quite sure if it's 20 years. I think it might be about 20 years.
Yeah, in that document we just read, it referred to a statute of limitations, but basically said it still establishes a what's the word? A pattern, correct. Raven Tree Frog says, question for the panel: will the Watchtower lend legal services to these accused, or are they on their own? Will the Watchtower to back them from this as much as possible?
No. In fact, I know that the one man I was talking about has a public defender assigned to him right now because he's in prison. That might change if he gets a private attorney. That's going to be very, very expensive.
Yeah, they don't want any part of it. They don't even want people to hear about this.
Exactly. They're not going to spend their resources.
But I have heard of personal experiences where someone was a survivor and giving their testimony and was on the side of the court with no support, and the defender, the abuser, had the full support of the congregation behind him.
Yeah, you see
So
see that with the Amish. I mean, it's
While they might not be giving the donations and the legal support to this, it is built in that they will have the emotional backing and deniability that the congregation may offer them.
and people need to realize that this is something that just doesn't go away. It's not like, I was on drugs 20 years ago and now, that's great. This is something that once you're a pedophile, you're pretty much prone to that. Now you can act on it or not, but it's not something that you just get cured from.
Indeed, worth remembering as well that the acting Attorney General was asked about the broader implications regarding the leadership and the guidance that was given to the congregations, and gave the question, you might say, short shrift by saying this is an ongoing investigation. So to at least some degree, the legal department will have their hands full, because the organisation is being investigated. But yes, it seems these individuals will be thrown under the bus, which is what should happen. There has been a Jehovah's Witness statement. As Christians, Jehovah's Witnesses despise the mistreatment and abuse of anyone, especially precious children. While it is not appropriate to comment on cases pending before the courts, we want to express our concern for all victims of abuse, regardless of faith.
And so
So generic.
it is generic. Yeah. And while I'm going to play devil's advocate, for the lack of better words, I believe this statement, because I believe a lot of witnesses, if they knew this and knew it to be true, would find this abhorrent. But they're so conditioned, and the situation is set up so that it perpetuates this kind of behavior and allows this kind of grooming of children and of families. So they're likely to support the abuser in those types of cases. So, I'm sorry. It's just very upsetting today, and I think that's why I'm lost for words at some moments because of that.
Well,
you're both doing brilliantly. Yeah.
Speaking of what you just said, Jana, I did actually confront my mother about this, and she didn't want to talk about it. Nope, he's gone. It's swept under the rug. He's out. She didn't shut it down. Just completely shut it down. And I think that's what they do.
It's what they're trained to do.
That's what they're trained to do. Yeah. Ignore the elephant in the room here.
Thank you very much, also Raven Tree Frog, for your very, very generous super chat. Appreciate the channel and our panel guests doing this. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Raven. Sabrina Craft again comments, keep an eye out for a huge pedophile case from Hardin, Montana. It is in the court system in Billings, Montana. Horrible case. Elders and ministerial servants involved. Jehovah's Witnesses is using delay tactics. Thank you very much for the heads up there, Sabrina. I actually hadn't heard of more cases in Montana. Obviously, Montana, something of an epicenter, if you will, of abuse cases, given the famous case that was overturned on appeal. But we'll certainly keep an eye on that and comment as we know more. Never Perching says she's talking as if, I think this is referring to the acting Attorney General. Never Perching, by the way, is a patron. She's talking as if guilty until proven innocent. Is this allowed? So I think it's a genuine question along the lines of, hang on a minute, is it right to frame these individuals? To what extent can we talk about these in definitive terms?
Well, she never says they're guilty. She just says these are the charges, and they are the charges. And yes,
And she was, when she was saying recounting the story, she was saying is alleged to have.
they're alleged. They're
yeah.
all they right now is allegations.
I assume they're guilty.
Well, yeah. I mean, and,
I understand that it's supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, but
And
I am far more willing to say, okay, this child said that they felt unsafe and that this happened to them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take precautions, whether or not this actually happened, to make sure it doesn't happen to anybody else. So whether it did happen or it didn't happen, something needs to be done.
right. And and we have
And I'm not attacking that person at all. I'm
we
just-
have a good justice system here, never perching, and we are innocent until we are proven guilty. However, those are the charges, and a jury, when they're picked, they're basically saying, put that out of your mind and concentrate on just, did this happen or not. So there's no predetermination here made. Obviously, she probably thinks they are guilty. She's prosecuting it, but she very careful by using the word alleged. And that's what we all need to remember. These are just allegations at this point. Nothing's been in a court of law been proven or pled guilty. So, that's the answer.
Sure, thank you. And Luna J. Michael Kaufman says, to everyone who's been abused and assaulted by this organization, our day is coming. Karma is waiting at the door. I hope more come forward all over the world to expose all the abuse that goes on. No arguments from me,
Nope.
Luna, or from the rest of the panel, it seems. This is going to be, how do I do this? Come mother of pearl, see mother of pearl. You are innocent until proven guilty. That said, if the grand jury indicts you, they will already probably have more than enough to convict you. Yeah, this isn't something that's being done lightly, shall we say. Thank you very much indeed, Lisa Burberry, for your very kind support of the channel, which allows us to, keep our team going and our business going, and keep an eye on these cases as they develop. Freedom71 says, when I was in there, was an elder in mid-20s romantically involved with someone under legal age. Not a huge age difference, but he was an elder. Not many knew about it, should have squealed on them. So even among our viewers, and we've got over 278 across Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and already we have a viewer who's saying, yeah, this is similar to what I've experienced in terms of
part of the
people
culture.
in positions of power. Yeah. Super Mayor 31. This channel is not in a position to verify as to whether this is actually a mayor or whether they are super, but that's the name. I'm fine with them arresting the perpetrators, but ultimately you have to go after the governing body, because they are the ones that set these policies in motion through the Shepherd of the Flock of God book. Yes, I've long been saying, and in fact there's a video going out on the channel tomorrow where I talk about my changed thoughts on the future of the organization, and I reassert that ultimately, the governing body needs to be behind bars, and not just the governing body, but governing body helpers who have been involved. Most certainly the service committee helpers who are part and parcel, who on a daily basis oversee this industrial scale cover up of abuse. If it's not already against the law, it should be. And unfortunately, laws will not get changed.
Yeah.
It is against. Why is no one doing anything then?
Well, I mean, you're mandated to report.
Yeah.
If you're an elder or whatever deacon in a church,
They try to go under the clergy.
Clergy.
pass.
You're mandated reporter, so report it. You're skirting the law there, And then when it goes up to the governing body, or then they know about it. Shame on them. They need to start from the top up and work their way down. I agree. We need to have another Australian commission here.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And to what extent is the To what extent can we compare the Pennsylvania grand jury with the Australian Royal Commission?
Sort of kind of similar. It's, under the investigation kind of on the side, and, gathering all the information and then bringing it forward. So it's very, very similar. I was just impressed at how public it was in Australia. Like, a lot of people, I wish, like you said, Jen, we got so much going on in the world. We got
This is probably a lot smaller scale.
right. But I just think we need to get the word out and spread it around that this is a problem.
Patrick Din says, Pat from Nottingham, UK, just keep chipping away at this disgusting organisation. Just keep chipping away. Thank you very much, Patrick. The Resistance, thank you so much for your incredibly generous super chat. Great job as usual. Lloyd, well, I'm not doing it on my own. I'm assisted by 2 wonderful panelists here and a dog, no less.
Yes.
It seems.
Charlie wants to put his paws in.
So maybe we can find a way of getting a portion of this converted into dog treats. But thank you very much for your support of the channel. Sharon Idle also supporting the channel there. I haven't donated for ages. It's catch-up time. Well, anything is appreciated, but suffice to say, just caring about this subject and following it and wanting to see an end to this horrendous abuse is more than enough. Freedom71, thank you for your super chat. Lloyd and panel, thanks for doing this on such a sensitive subject. Thank you, Freedom71.
It's absolutely not easy.
No, I said at the beginning, I would rather be doing something else. To be honest,
important.
It eats away at me. It eats away at me. To be honest, but we need to do it. We need to talk about it. Natalie Sanchez, who has been interviewed on the Lloyd Evans channel, says, do we know if there is connection in these cases, as in some kind of ring, or if these are one-off incidents?
Interesting theory. I wondered that myself. There's no evidence it's a ring, but it's interesting that the 2 congregations, Lancaster East and West, they all know each other. So you got to wonder.
Indeed. Deborah says, Lloyd, is it possible that some sexual predators became Jehovah's Witnesses because of the practice of preaching in the prisons? It seems like it could be the perfect storm. Impossible to say with any certainty, but it is certainly true that Jehovah's Witnesses go above and beyond in trying to recruit from prisons, and almost inevitably there will be individuals who exploit this system to earn some kind of reprieve or some kind of abbreviation of their prison sentence.
Yeah, I would say there are too many factors to even to put it on one sort of population, because maybe some of those people genuinely did convert because they thought they could make their way right with God, but maybe some of them did see that opportunity and seize it because they're monsters. But like you could even say, because of the sexual oppression, because of the way that they force people into marriages, the way they deal courtship. There's so many factors that could make someone a monster. The pressures that, and absolutely, there's too many factors to consider to say it's just that reason. But it's a huge possibility.
And without wishing to be too conspiratorial, prisoners get access to the news like anyone else. And if you are a pedophile and you do research on Jehovah's Witnesses, and then Jehovah's Witnesses come knocking on your cell door, you're
going to do it. I mean, when I was, working in the court system, the amount of defendants used to say, "Oh, I'm attending church or I'm studying the Bible." It was something to do. It's something to get them out of their cell, So, and I remember a judge said one time, "I'm not impressed with that. You're getting out of your cell for an hour a day. You're studying the Bible, but it's so it could be.
Who knows?
A lot of these perpetrators, in my experience from hearing cases and doing trials, were victims themselves of children. A lot of them, high percentage.
The governor, thank you very much indeed for your very kind super chat.
That's Shapiro?
The governor is, he's a governing hottie. He's a much appreciated supporter of the channel. So nice to see the governor popping up there. Raven Tree Frog says, I think there is more to come in the investigation. The shepherd, the flock of God, is the elders' manual to follow, written by the Watchtower. When in doubt, the elders are required to call the service desk. Yes, ultimately the book stops there. If you're going to literally write guidance saying if there's a whisper of child abuse, call the legal desk, that means the legal desk is involved in all the decisions that get made regarding child abuse. So that, we can't just simply, or Jehovah's Witnesses can't simply just wash their hands of it all and say, oh, this is just a rogue congregation or a rogue body of elders. Stephanie Perry, I think, reflects the opinion of everyone of right mind who is following this story. I'm disgusted. The governor says, thank you, Lloyd. Important we keep this up. Don't forget the video where a governing body member said just because they were convicted by a jury doesn't mean they were guilty. The governor there referring to a talk by David Splain in, I think, the 2021 convention, in which David Splain downplayed the implications of receiving a criminal conviction of any kind, including by implication connected with child sexual abuse.
I just can't believe he said that. Like, really?
Yeah. Tamar Janes says, I think this is a question. The database would only be being held back because it would contain something that is damaging. Governing body member Leo Greenlees was dismissed for pedophilia, so would be on there. I think it's worth just, for the record, stating that there's no definitive documented evidence that Leo Greenlees was a pedophile, but it's the reports that that come up when you research this strongly hint in that direction. What I will say is that I have knowledge that I haven't discussed yet on this channel that would indicate that the records that were examined by the Australian Royal Commission did have a high-ranking organisation member among them, but that individual was not named as part of the Australian Royal Commission investigation. So you're not completely wrong there. I'm sure that if everything were to come to light, we would be appalled at the extent of the rot and how high up this goes. Elizabeth, thank you very much indeed for your super chat. Thank you. Keep up the fight. That more or less. Oh, we've had another super chat from KitKat. So agree. Chip away. Every single bit, no matter how big or small, will help erode and destroy that disgusting cult. Thank you for all you do. Thank you so much indeed to all of you who've tuned in, currently on 279 watching across Facebook, Twitter and YouTube. What we typically do at the end of JW Watch episodes is go around the panel and get concluding thoughts. So perhaps we could start with Jana.
I'm genuinely impressed by the governor, Shapiro, and the person he chose as, or the person who was chosen as his predecessor, as the attorney voted in. And their dedication to this is just, it's, I'm honestly speechless, because it seems that so many things are sort of stacked against survivors, so that, they have to, this innocent until proven that it's not a system built for survivors to. They make it hard. They make it hard for you to get justice. They make it hard for you to be heard. They make it hard for you to be believed. And so the fact that they are so aggressively dealing with this, and they didn't stop at the initial 4, that they are now at 9, and that it's an ongoing investigation. And they didn't disclose whether it was an organization-wide investigation. I'm genuinely impressed with their work, and I think that, again, the number at the bottom, give them a call. If you have something that you can add to spread that awareness, that it's not just those 2 Pennsylvania congregations. Maybe that's all they can prosecute, but maybe they have the means to bring it to somebody who can make it a organization-wide investigation.
Thank you very much. And just it's worth clarifying that Jana has her own YouTube channel, and a link is in the description if you want to check out her amazing content. Jana does reviews of Watchtower study articles applying the bite model, which is a fantastic service. Go on.
I like your videos.
Thank you.
Yeah. When you raised your finger, I thought you were going to say something. But,
Oh, no,
yeah,
this
okay.
bike.
Oh, sorry, you were pointing to the sign behind you. Okay. Let's not go into backdrops too much because there's an Arsenal scarf behind Diana, and I'm trying to ignore it.
Unless you're a fan.
Okay, so I do just want to show a few more comments. Let's see here. I think we had a super chat from James Cameron. These monsters deserve to be put under the prison. I just hope the victims or any victim of child sexual abuse are getting help so they will no longer be victims anymore, but healing and thriving in life. Thank you, James. Mini Mobile Review says, keep up the amazing work. You're breathtaking, all of you. Thank you very much. Daniela McGee, thank you so much for your super chat. That's very much appreciated. And Nancy Scott, perhaps you can incorporate your answer to this, Diana, in your concluding comments. Says, I just spoke with the Pennsylvania District Attorney's Office. All they could tell me is this is big. The investigation is nationwide. They are getting 1,000 calls a day. Hallelujah. Obviously, we can't verify this information, but thank you for that comment, Nancy. And Diana, maybe you could encapsulate your answer to that in your concluding comments.
Very, very possible they are getting those calls. And I want to echo what Jana said about Governor Shapiro and now the acting governor, and taking this seriously. It's in my opinion, being in the legal system for as long as I have, it's kind of been pushed aside, and I've sat through so many trials where, the victim is just not believed, and they're like, throwing questions at them. Well, why weren't there's this and that? And so the system is set up to discourage these victims from coming forward because they know that they're going to be subject to, cross-examination and all this kind of stuff. So it is a scary thing to do. And I just want to echo Jana's words and Lloyd that they're very, and the Attorney General, they're very brave for coming forward. Thank you. If you're watching, thank you for coming forward, because without you, there wouldn't be cases. And I have no doubt, Lloyd and Jana, that we'll be back here in the future, following up with what's going to happen with these additional 5 people. I know the one that I'm kind of tracking, I'm not quite sure what's going to happen, but if there is a trial, I will be attending. And so I can let you know that.
Fantastic. It would be very helpful to have you actually on the ground and able to shed a little bit more light on the dynamics of everything. I actually was kind of wondering what to call this episode, having already called the first one the Pennsylvania 4, and I just thought I'm just going to keep numbering how many there are. You know, if we get to
Yes.
15, 20, 50, fair enough. You know, the very fact that that we're dealing with so many individuals accused of such atrocious crimes speaks volumes. But I just want to thank my esteemed panel for sharing their insights and sharing their time on a weekend, no less, for the benefit of viewers. Thanks so much to both of you.
Thank you, Lloyd. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
So viewers, I hope you have found this episode of JW Watch insightful. Don't forget that you can keep abreast of this story and others by subscribing to the Lloyd Evans channel. But that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for watching.